Hey Westlight, for this week's Dear Westlight, I have the privilege of talking about whatever I feel I need to address. And this week I received a few emails from you about my last sermon, which it wasn't the main point of the sermon, but there's a small portion of it where I talked about rapture doctrine. And both questions were basically about how was rapture doctrine formed if it's not true. And in case you don't know what rapture doctrine is, it's a teaching in some Christian circles where they believe when Jesus comes back, his second coming, that Christians are going to be taken out of this earth while God destroys this earth. And I was saying that that's not what the Bible teaches. So how did that come to be? Well, as far as I can tell, in the early 19th century in Scotland, there was a farm girl who had a dream, basically people disappearing from this earth. And then she read through scripture and she came across this verse in 1 Thessalonians 4 and then took that verse. I don't think she interpreted it correctly, but she took that verse, misinterpreted it, and read it into the Luke passage that I talked about this past Sunday. So before her, there was nobody else that I could tell at least that put the Luke passage with the 1 Thessalonians passage together and created this whole teaching about rapture theology, rapture doctrine. So let me share with you that passage in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. It says this, "After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." And then it concludes by saying, and so we will be with the Lord forever. So there's two things that's said here. It says that first, we're going to meet with the Lord when he comes back, and then we're going to be meeting him in the clouds. So first thing, in all of Christian scholarship up until the early 1800s, there was no scholar, and you can look up yourself if you want, there's no scholar that interpreted that verse right there as rapture. And the reason is because this is a very cultural passage. So for a group of people to come out and meet the king is a very cultural thing back then. When people went to war with the king, when the king has victory, as he's coming back home, the people of the kingdom who stayed back will come out and meet the king outside and celebrate him as he's coming in. So here, Paul the Apostle, who wrote this passage, he's basically saying when Jesus comes back at his return, he is going to have victory. And his people, that's Christians, we're going to go out and celebrate his victory. That's basically what that passage says. So the second thing that this passage teaches is about this thing about meeting the Lord in the air. And that's another thing that we have to know the context for. Meeting somebody in the air, or to be in the air, be in the sky, is a dominion of authority of the land. That's what it means. So if you have dominion of the air of Los Angeles, then that means you have authority over Los Angeles. That's what it means. So when it says that we're going to meet him in the air, that basically means that Jesus is going to win over the entire world. So it doesn't mean we're going to be taken away. It doesn't mean that God's going to destroy this world. As a matter of fact, it says that we're going to be dwelling with the Lord forever. And then the implication in this passage is that we're going to be dwelling with him forever here on this earth. When this teaching first got out, when this young lady came up with this teaching, it was actually ridiculed a lot. All the mainstream Christianity saw it as a cult. And then it was buried for a long time. And then the early 1900s, it kind of came back, mostly due to things like World War I. People were digging really deep to explain the tragedy around them. And then from that, some people wrote books about it, people wrote songs about it, people wrote stories about it, and they took those stories and made it into movies, really bad movies. You probably heard the Left Behind series. And a lot of pastors started preaching on it. And now it's part of mainstream Christianity, and I'm not too big a fan of where we are on that teaching. Now, you might be wondering why this is so important, and you're like, it doesn't change the fact that I love Jesus, it doesn't change the way that I treat my neighbor. I mean, what are the implications of getting this theology right? The best way I could put it is, if you were to own a house, and if you were to be renting a house, which one would you take better care of? And now let's put it in our context. If you were living on this earth knowing that this is your home with Jesus forever and ever, or if you think that you're just going to be here temporarily and eventually God's going to destroy this earth, which one of you are going to take better care of this land? Which one of us is going to be more environmentally conscious? Now, I'm not saying that people who buy into rapture theology cares nothing about our environment. I'm not saying that, but it gives you permission to believe that. And so that's why it's dangerous. So I hope that this clears up some misunderstandings. I hope this answers the questions that you had. I know this opens up more doors. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, kotz@westlight.org. Okay, well, have a wonderful week. God bless you. I'll see you again on Sunday.